What does it mean when a black woman's presence in a luxury store feels like an intrusion? La Lune Boutique sat on the corner of Vireo Street and Corbin Avenue. The soft chime above the door rang out as she stepped inside. The boutique was unnervingly quiet, too quiet, not peaceful, but the kind of silence that clung to the air, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Rows of satin and lace were carefully displayed, each piece glimmering softly in the ambient light, as if to say, "Admire me." The atmosphere was serene, almost museum-like, but there were no customers, and only one sales associate stood behind the counter, her attention divided between the carefully folded garments in front of her. The woman who entered didn't make a grand entrance, but the way she moved demanded attention. Her presence was commanding, yet understated. Dark, polished skin, long braids flowing down her back. She wore a sleek dress beneath a flowing silk robe, gold hoops in her ears. No makeup was needed. Her skin, flawless like mahogany, said enough. She didn't rush as she walked, as if the place itself were made to accommodate her. The sales associate, a blonde with sharp features, glanced up. At first, there was nothing unusual. But then, she did a double take. The woman before her was striking in a way that wasn't flashy, just undeniable. The blonde's smile faltered, then disappeared, replaced by something defensive. "Can I help you?" she asked, already on edge, her lips tight. "Just browsing," the woman replied softly, her voice low but clear. The brunette associate next to the blonde leaned in, whispering something to her. The blonde's expression tightened. "This section is for VIP clients only," she said, her voice rising slightly. "You might be more comfortable at one of our outlets." The woman didn't flinch. She met the blonde's gaze, her eyes unblinking, as if saying, "I know exactly where I am." But the blonde didn't back down. She stepped in front of the woman, physically blocking her path. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave," she said, her tone firm. "Company policy." There was a brief, tense pause. Other shoppers, who had been pretending to browse, hesitated. The woman stood still, eyes unwavering, taking a moment to assess the situation. Then, without a word, she nodded once, as if confirming something to herself. She turned and walked out of the boutique, the chime above the door ringing again as she exited. The store returned to its quiet hum. The blonde returned to folding garments, her movements now precise and deliberate, as though nothing had happened. The brunette scrolled through her phone, pretending to be absorbed in a video. But the silence felt different now. The air seemed heavier. It was the kind of silence that comes when something important has been disrupted, yet no one dares acknowledge it. Even the faint rustling of clothes seemed louder, as though trying to fill the void. 3 minutes passed. Then 4. Then the door slammed open with a force that made the chime stutter. A man walked in like a storm in human form, tall, sharp, dressed in an expensive navy Tom Ford suit, white shirt unbuttoned just enough to suggest power. In one hand he held a tablet, in the other a fury that radiated through the room. "Where's she?" he demanded, his voice echoing off the marble floors. The blonde blinked. "I'm sorry, sir, who?" "Delilah Muir," he snapped, his gaze icy. "Where is she?" The brunette slowly lowered her phone, unsure of what to say. She had only been following along with the events and hadn't truly processed the woman's significance. The blonde began, but the man cut her off. "She was here 5 minutes ago. 6 feet 1 inch, long braids, beautiful as hell, wearing our limited edition Tokyo silk. You saw her." The blonde's eyes widened in realization, but she hesitated. I didn't recognize her," she stammered. The man didn't blink. "She's the face of our new global campaign," he continued, his voice low and deadly serious. "Our highest paid model. Our brand. And you kicked her out like she was trash." The blonde opened her mouth, but no words came out. He turned the tablet around to show them the image. There she was, Delilah, in all her glory, posing in the very lingerie that hung behind them. A blown-up version of that photo would be on billboards in Times Square next week. The man's eyes narrowed. "You're done here. Clear out your lockers." Both associates tried to speak, but he didn't let them. "Both of you." The door slammed again as he left, his fury lingering in the air. Behind him, the boutique was still, but not from tension. This was the silence of consequences. It was a kind of silence that lingered after a storm, when the damage had already been done and only the aftermath remained. The internet was unforgiving. Brandier, once celebrated for its curated luxury and soft glamour, was now under siege. The latest post, showing a pale model lounging in blush-tone satin, had nothing to do with the scandal, But the comments told a very different story, still posting like we didn't watch you humiliate the woman who made this brand matter. Aesthetics can't cover racism. Delete this and start over. Within 24 hours, Delilah's quiet post had outperformed Brandier's entire marketing budget. The boutique's PR team scrambled to manage the fallout from their office on Norwood Boulevard. Get a statement up, the head of PR barked, fingers flying over her keyboard. We don't even have contact with her, an assistant mumbled, panic in her voice. I don't care. We need to look human before this buries us. A rushed, generic apology was quickly drafted and posted. Black background, white text. The robotic tone was instantly detectable. We are aware of the incident at our Milford Street location. We deeply regret any offense caused and are committed to diversity and inclusion. The apology lasted 11 minutes before it became a meme. Creators across platforms broke it down, while Tumblr poets quoted Audre Lorde, turning their anger into art. One former employee of Lyra posted a video, her lip trembling. I worked there for 2 years. What they did to Delilah wasn't a one-time thing. That was the culture. Another posted screenshots of internal emails with phrases like client suitability and brand aligned highlighted in red. It was no longer just about Delilah. It was about every woman who'd ever felt she didn't belong. At Café Lior, 3 blocks from Lyra, Delilah watched it all unfold. Her phone buzzed. Mark was calling again. She picked it up. Have you seen the fallout? Mark asked, his voice anxious. They want to meet. They're offering. Delilah cut him off. They're not offering. They're reacting. A pause. So what now? Delilah looked out the window, watching the city move as if nothing had changed. But she could feel the shift. It wasn't panic, it was power. She smiled faintly. Now we let the fire breathe. The warehouse studio buzzed with activity. Photographers, stylists, camera crews. Everyone knew today mattered. Mark spotted her first. There she is, he breathed, as if unsure she'd come. Delilah walked in like she owned the storm. Poised, radiant, and still no makeup. She wore a long camel coat, vintage Chanel boots, and an expression that said, watch what happens next. Mark jogged up to her. You okay? She nodded once. Where's the stylist? He blinked. Right over here. Delilah was already walking toward the racks. She picked out a set from the upcoming line. Black lace with gold threading, high-waisted, elegant, unapologetically bold. She held it up. This one. The stylist hesitated. That's supposed to be for. Delilah raised an eyebrow. It's mine now. Minutes later, the first flash went off, then another, and another. The entire room fell into rhythm. Her. The lens. The light. One image more commanding than the last at a T1 point. She stood directly under the studio spotlight, head tilted, hand on hip. You sure you want this one to go out first? The photographer asked. Delilah smiled, not sweetly. In this shot, she wore the lingerie, holding the brand's shopping bag in one hand and a crumpled receipt in the other. The edges of the receipt were burned. A silent message. You tried to erase me, but now I'm the headline. Mark grinned. That's the one. Monday, 8:57 a.m. Fifth Avenue was waking up. Coffee carts, early shoppers, yellow cabs honking like they were late to somewhere that didn't matter. And then it happened, the billboard. 40 feet tall, impossible to miss. Delilah Muir, center frame, lit like a goddess in midnight lace. Her gaze locked forward, like she was looking straight into your soul. Behind her, the brand's name in soft gold script. But it was the tagline underneath that made jaws drop, not just the face of the brand. The reason it has one. No logo. No hashtags. No need. People stopped mid-step. Phones came out. TikToks went live. Inside Brandier, just a block away, the new manager, a sharp black woman in a suit sharper than the scissors in the back room, stood at the front window, watching it all unfold. She didn't smile. She just nodded to herself and turned away. Delilah had rewritten the rules. The campaign exploded, not just the images, but what they meant. Luxury wasn't changing. It had changed. Interview requests poured in. Talk shows. Panels. Magazines offering covers. But Delilah declined them all. Instead, she posted a video. Just her, sitting on a white couch, no music, no edits. Some people asked why I didn't speak up sooner. The truth is, I didn't need to. You all saw what happened. You turned the moment into a movement. And now we build something better for all of us. In the comments, fire, fire, fire. I've never bought lingerie in my life, and now I'm buying 3 sets. She didn't cancel them. She eclipsed them. This was history, and she did it without raising her voice. At 18 noon, the meeting was set. Boardroom, glass walls, polished table, a view that screamed bold money. The air was thick with the scent of new rules. Delilah walked in like she wasn't impressed, because she wasn't. Mark was already there, seated, trying not to look smug. He rose when she entered. "They're ready for you," he said, as if it were a favor. Delilah didn't nod. She didn't need to. Inside the boardroom, the members were seated in a U-shape, majority white, majority male, and right now uncomfortable. A few cleared their throats. One stood to greet her. "Ms. Muir, thank you for coming." She took her seat at the head of the table, not offered, taken down a woman in a sleek gray blazer. The head of global strategy leaned forward. "We want to apologize again, privately and personally." Delilah raised an eyebrow. "You already did. Publicly. Because you had to." A pause. "Well," the woman continued, "we also want to offer something meaningful. Permanent." She slid a folder across the table. Inside, contracts, ownership breakdowns, a signature line. "We're offering you a stake in the brand, creative control over the next 3 campaigns, and your own line, designed by you, labeled under your name." Delilah didn't touch the folder. Not yet. She looked around the room, measured. "Why?" she asked. "Because you're the reason we're still standing," he said. Delilah leaned back, calm. Then she smiled, not because she was flattered, but because she knew this wasn't just a win. It was a transfer of power. The pen hovered over the contract. Everyone leaned in, lawyers, executives, Mark, even the intern pretending not to watch from the hallway. The silence was thick with anticipation. Delilah looked at the line. Her name was printed there. Delilah Muir. Bold. Waiting. She didn't move. Instead, she closed the folder. Looked up. "I have one condition." The room shifted. A few backs straightened. The woman in gray nodded. "Of course." "What is it?" Delilah's voice hit like thunder. "I want the boutique on Milford Street. Renamed. Not rebranded." "A beat. To what?" the man asked cautiously. "The Muir Room." Another pause. "You kicked me out of it," she said. "Now I own it." No one argued. Delilah signed. Smooth. Unbothered. Just like that, she became part owner, creative director, and legend.